under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Oh, he's got. Can we get copies of the agenda for the commissioners? Thank you, sir. Hand them out so I can get my fingers to work. Even give you yours back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Were there any changes that needed to be made? No, no changes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'm moving on to the consent agenda with approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 27th and approval of claims for September 10th. Were there any questions?
I did have,
So did I.
okay. I'll let you go first, sir.
Well, I was almost gonna suggest that we pull the claims off of the consent agenda and because, so we can discuss it in more detail. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And do you want to approve the claim separately now?
Well, yeah, so we both had questions, so, you wanna go first?
I'll defer.
Well, actually, I wanted to look at them.
Oh, so did I. So since I have it in front of me, General Manager Chris, I just had a quick question about the P&P excavating line on there, which is for 424,000, and then we're seeing a additional expense for P&P and approval later on in the packet today. And so I just wanted to know if those were separate or if the 424 is part of that almost $1 million that we're approving later.
So the 424,000, I believe, is the excavation of the evaporation ponds out back.
Okay.
And that the last payment that we've got in there is closure on that contract.
Okay.
So now on this though, I want to defer to Kurt because he really knows best on that. So is Kurt's available?
That was one of my,
Sorry to steal your thunder.
no. No. I get plenty of opportunities.
Great minds think alike.
I get plenty of opportunities. Oh, yeah, there he is.
Hey, Kurt.
So the 424,000, that was actually for the line stop at the D station.
Ah.
That was the work that we had done where we had the A&A come out of Oregon. I showed pictures a couple weeks ago of that whole structure they put into the pipe, and that's for the 424,000. Because that's the reason we did that is because that valve inside the D station is the one that's failing and won't close. So that's for the 424,000. And then we're going to request to do the actual D station project, which is the redundant lines, which is going to be after that valve. So that's the request from later. But I think there was another claim on today's. I don't have the list in front of me.
The one that jumped out to me was the P&P for 424.
So the 424, that's the one,
Yeah.
that's the work we did with the line stop.
Great. Thank you.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. Time for bifocals.
So I had questions about the Concert North America on water treatment plant 1.
So that's for RW38, which is the design of the rebuild of plant 1. And
Okay.
that's engineering.
Okay. I believe that was all of my questions. It was the other one was the P&P excavating, so. Yeah, I'm ready to move on to approval.
All right.
Want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve not consent, agenda, approve the claims of September tenth.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to public comment. We do have some public here in the room. Any comments?
Oh, no,
Nothing from you
me.
today. Okay, and I can't see anyone online. It's just a picture of us. Is there anyone online that would like to speak? I know. Can we get a, just anyone with a hand raised?
I know somebody who's.
Wanted to make-
No hands currently.
No hands currently. Okay, there will be a second chance for public comment near the end of the meeting. So we will move on to the general manager's report.
So my report's really brief this time. Just want to remind everyone that Water Week is coming up. For those of you who are available, Run with the Chums is Saturday, and there's a whole list of other fun things that are going on around Water Week. So I mean, there's an entire calendar, and there's a lot of fun stuff. Rebecca is our lead person on this. And one thing that I do want to remind people is on September 23rd, which is right at the end of the Water Week, there's going to be a 2-hour meeting on residential well users and adjudication in Ferndale. So I think that one is, it's the Whatcom County Public Works is the organizing agency, and it's going to be at the Pioneer Pavilion. And it's 23rd, 5:30 to 7:30.
What day is that?
Monday.
There was.
You go online, there's a request to register because they're not sure of space.
Yeah, the Pioneer Pavilion can hold a couple hundred, and we've been there for at least one other adjudication hearing where it was packed.
Okay.
Was that what time did you say?
5:30.
It's 5:30 to 7:30.
But again, registering.
There was an interesting thing in there, a tour of the South Fork aquifer recharge.
Yeah, that's a Linden project, the managed aquifer recharge that they've got. So what they're doing there is they're actually pumping water into the aquifer in order to offset withdrawals at a different point on the river. It's a really fascinating project. It's been approved by Ecology. It's been through the Watershed Management Board years ago, and now it's up and running. So if you get a chance to go on that tour, that's a good one.
We're gonna be over in at the Chelan PD, Douglas
Ah.
PD during that time frame.
You know,
That's unfortunate.
we
Yeah.
might want to just do it later on our own, because it's an important project for us to be aware of, because we had a project on California Creek that had some of those same, but this is obviously a much more comprehensive project that never went through. So at some point, it might be good to get a presentation on.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, and I just on the Mars project, they had one last year on the one that they're doing closer to Linden. And this is this one that they're doing up in the South Fork. So my guess is that they will probably have some more presentations on this later.
Okay, that's good.
And then as a final reminder, tomorrow is the local integrating organization, the LIO meeting with the Puget Sound Partnership. And you guys are all three invited. I don't know, Atul, I believe I saw you RSVP, yes. And Jamie is going to be moderator on the panel tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
And Todd, I don't know if you're going to be able to make it or not, but the tours in the afternoon are really, really valuable. It's the South Fork stuff again. Kind of take people through that.
And there's activity on Thursday too. And I didn't find it exact what times those seminars are on Thursday.
This Thursday?
Yeah, on the 12th. In Becky Peterson's email, I talked about September 11th and September 12th, and there's some activities happening on Thursday too, but the dates the times are not, and locations are.
I believe she sent out an email recently, I can double check. Well, actually, the Puget Sound Partnership also sent out an email, but gives you the agenda for both days.
Okay.
We were not responsible for anything that happened on the 12th, so that
Yeah.
would be coming directly from the Puget Sound.
Well, I guess, yeah, I was questioning as if you were, is there anything, do you have any input for the commission of, obviously with limited time for everybody? Are there any particular things that you think would be the most important at Water Week? And also at Wednesday, Thursdays meetings that would be good for commissioners to get exposed to?
I would definitely say the Wednesday meeting at the Puget Sound Partnership is where, if you want to have a presence, that's where you have a presence. Yeah, there's a more of the business aspect for the Puget Sound leadership role on the Thursday. There, it's their meeting. Water Week, it's just, I would again urge you to just type in Wacom Water Week and you can look at all the activities to see which ones you might be something you wanted. There's a lot of really nice tours going on, you know. Bellingham does their water treatment plants, the Mars project, there's a Wacom farm tour. I should have brought my list.
No, it's
He's
right
got
here.
that, he's got it right here. I mean, there's quite a few activities. So I would just urge you to go to that. Because the Wacom Water Week event page will tell you exactly what's going on in more detail.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But for the Puget Sound Partnership, I think it's more critical for if any commissioners are going the Wednesday. And we do appreciate if you sign up for it. Because I give Becky Peterson huge kudos. I mean, she's been organizing this in conjunction with the Puget Sound Partnership and everybody locally. And there's going to be a lot of topics there about what our needs are for funding from them. So I don't know, I mean, Jenny's
I'll
gonna
be
be
there.
there.
Yeah,
Tomorrow.
Jenny will be there.
I will be there tomorrow.
Do we need to send a notice in case we have that we'll have meetings or?
As long as you guys aren't talking to each other, I mean, you attend these things and be recipients of information, but you're not talking and having a discussion.
Yeah.
If I go, I won't look at them.
Well, when you say talking, not talking about it, you can go into the word, obviously.
You can talk about the mariners.
Yeah, okay.
That's.
But,
let's just-
yeah,
let's
why
talk
would
about
you?
the
I'm
Talk about
just-
Seahawks,
Mariners aren't, well, maybe they don't. agree.
Maybe,
No,
yeah.
You never know.
Hope springs eternal.
Thank you.
And that's it for me. I was out most of last week and now I'm back.
Not any Tanner.
Hey, hat and 50 sunscreen. I know better.
Attaboy.
I've burned so many times.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to an operations report. That be you, Kurt?
Do you have anything for us, Kurt?
Well, we have bringing the bid to you.
Okay, that'll be later.
I'm not prepared to be standing in this room. I
Okay.
don't have an agenda with me or anything. Operations. I wasn't even thinking about what, I mean,
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing out of the
We'll
ordinary.
ask you up later to
Yeah.
talk about P and P. Yeah. Okay. Old business. We'll start with a broadband update.
So there's a letter in your packet
Mhm.
that is from Andrew. Let me give the context of the letter. So in terms of the policy of the board, and we've kind of been over this and it's been an evolving kind of view. If I could stay where we are today, it's that, we believe that we should participate in building out broadband, that there should be dark fiber, that it should be publicly owned, open access, and funded by external funds, whether it's grant financed or LUD financed. And that's kind of been where we've landed as where we ought to go. The BEAD opportunity is pretty different. And as we've been working through that, my views on it have changed. The WISBO's views on it have changed. Andrew's views on it have changed over time about what's going on. But we've got to remember that the NTIA is at the national level, and they looked at it and said, how can we get the most customers served nationwide? And the answer is through the private ISPs. And nationally, that is the right answer. Right? Now, locally, that may not be, but at the nationwide level, it definitely is. So NTIA wrote the requirements for their grants in order to attract and get the private ISPs involved. That's what got communicated to WISBO. Now, WISBO looked at it and said, you know, they've been going back and forth and back and forth. And so a couple of things to think about. One, we think it's going to be $2 to $3 billion to serve the last 10% of customers in Washington State. And there's $1.23 billion allocated. So half to less than half of the money needed to get there. So when you look at it, you say, okay, well, how is WISBO going to figure that out? And I'm not going to speak for WISBO. I don't know. But if I was in their position, I would say, well, let's see if we can get the most customers hooked up possible for that money, you know, kind of however you do that. And the best way to do that is on, you know, minimum cost per pass. At the same time, they've come out and said they're going to favor fiber to the home as the right answer for an infrastructure build out. Okay, so you look at that and you say, well, gosh, you know, why aren't customers served in Whatcom County? And the answer is because they're really expensive to serve. There's no cost-effective way to do that. And so it's very likely that a fiber to the home solution for many of our areas are going to be in the lower half or the upper half in terms of the cost, lower half in terms of scoring for any application that goes in. So when you look at it from that perspective, you go, well, gosh, okay, so Whatcom County is already a little bit disadvantaged, if not very disadvantaged. And then furthermore, when you look at it from a public perspective, our scoring that we would do from everything that WISBO has put out, although we haven't seen the notice of funding opportunity, the NOFO, we haven't seen that yet. But we think that it's going to be very hard for us to score at all, or, you know, of any significant score level without really getting ISPs bought into it. So kind of the long and the short of it is with our funding model and where I think the WISBO NOFO is going to drop, our odds of getting anything are very, very low, very, very low. And it's going to be a lot of effort to get there. So one thing that we could do is there are areas where we've already heard from the ISPs that they're going to go ahead and chase after it. They don't need any matching funds or anything else. It you know, with the NTIA grant, now it makes sense for them. I would just like to stand back on those areas and not spend time because they're going to do it. They're going to score more highly than we possibly could. And WISBO, you know, from that perspective, ought to grant those. There are areas where it's not likely that a third party is going to submit. And there's one right in the center of the county. We think that we'll probably be the only organization that submits anything. Whether or not we're competitive, you know, probably not. But I think it's worthwhile to submit using our paradigm. So, you know, that would be my recommendation on that area. And then the last thing is there are several areas. There are 11 project areas, I believe. And the ISPs have told us that, hey, it would make it much more competitive if you could bring the public matching dollars in from the state. So what that would look like is we would have to go in and not own the assets. We would simply be the conduit to get that money and get it to the ISPs to help underwrite the project. The benefit, of course, then you wouldn't have any public ownership. There wouldn't be a guarantee of open access. There, you know, none of that would happen. And we would be transferring public money to the private partnership, which is in fact what the NTIA is doing nationwide. That's literally what they're trying to do. What it would give us would be oversight on the projects. So we would at least have that kind of managerial oversight because we would have responsibility to report back to WISBO on how the grants were being administered. So with that, I just want to, you know, what Andrew's letter really is advocating is turn us loose to pursue those different strategies or not. And that's where we wanted to have the discussion with all of you. So at that point, Andrew, I stole all your thunder. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think, good morning, commissioners. Chris is absolutely right. That's where staff was coming from with the memo that was presented to you in today's packet. You know, I just think back to a year ago when we looked at, and even longer than that, when we looked at the federal RDOF funding or the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, and lots of folks were, you know, worried about kind of, well, what happens when these providers from federal, who are receiving federal subsidies, there's no oversight. And we've seen some of that, you know, in our community. I've heard some folks talk about, well, where's the RDOF funding? Where's the build out timeline? Where's the guardrails on those federal dollars? So I kind of see this BEAD opportunity as essentially the same, it's like RDOF 2.0 kind of happening. And so one way that we can be involved is to allow that local government oversight in some areas that are really rural in our community. And I think that's where a good opportunity and a good role for the PUD is under BEAD. And if we go through, you know, all the scoring criteria, which, you know, Chris alluded to already, it just looks like this is going to be tailored to the largest telco with the most resources. So kind of without regurgitating everything that Chris just said, not to say that we wouldn't revisit, you know, our current model and another funding opportunity, but this funding opportunity for BEAD is much different than, like, for instance, the Point Roberts project when it was tailored to public entities. And so we could, you know, we were able to move forward with a publicly owned asset that's open access, and we had control over that. So one of the biggest things coming out of the BEAD program is really the, and of many, are the fact that the project areas are not designed by us. They're designed at the federal and state level. And so you have a scenario where, you know, we are really good at identifying unserved locations in the community, but then you have to expand that out with the huge polygon area that the state has decided you have to serve everyone in that polygon per so you're running into areas where there's large existing telco infrastructure, which, to Chris's point, inflates the price of our per home pass cost, which makes us not score high based on the current NOFA. We'll see what happens when the final NOFA comes out. But for all these things and others, that's how we arrived and landed at where we are today. So rather than seeing another RDOF 2.0 where there's no oversight and there may be subsidies flowing without networks being built in a timely fashion, we can take on that role of local oversight, making sure that that we focus on achieving the grant deliverables on time. And that's where our involvement at that point would end.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. So first question, do we get some of the funding for our overhead then, or out of that?
Yeah, I believe so. It's a small amount, but that's what we need. And so, yeah, they allow you to recover that.
Okay, let me digest this for a minute.
And I guess the other thing is we don't need an answer from you guys today.
Okay, that's,
We really wanted to get the discussion going because the NOFO hasn't dropped yet. When it drops, then, you know, then it's go, go, go. And I just don't want Andrew to be spending a ton of time on things that have an extremely low probability of ever coming. He's got other things that he can be doing for us.
it's fair to say this is a relatively new understanding, right? Because I recall in many commission, and under this agenda topic, we were imagining and perhaps wishful thinking on our part, and certainly wishful advocacy on our part, that this wouldn't be that different from last year. And what we're hearing today is that it is very different from last year.
Yeah.
And I'm just want to let you all know that I'm really disappointed. It's not in us. I'm just really disappointed. On our community's behalf, on all our behalf. We've got meetings in September, and I'm guessing we're gonna be in a room, Todd and I are gonna be in a room full of people that are also disappointed. We're not alone.
I'm just not sure how many people outside of the PUDs and the ISPs themselves are tracking this issue.
Yeah.
I just don't think, and I mean, to your other point, our understanding of this has been evolutionary. And part of it has been as WSBO changes the rules, like up until a month ago, they were sure you could submit a hybrid solution and a fiber to the home solution, you know, that for the same area. And, you know, that way they could, you know, we thought we could really increase our scoring because our per pass cost could be brought down hugely. For instance, one of our project areas has, we think, a snow shed or a salt shed that's about 6 miles
Yes.
past next to the last customer. So you got to run 6 miles of fiber out there. You know what that does to your per pass cost for that area. Especially because in some there's no utility out there. So you got to set poles and it's in granite and, you know, so you're talking about blasting to set communication. I mean, it's really expensive. Anyway, our understanding has been evolving and it just keeps getting, you know, every time we peel the onion back, there's another obstacle. We think we've got the whole letter of credit thing more or less under control, but we may not. You know, again, when we see the NOFO, it may be that no, you can't have one of these pre-letters of credit. You've got to actually get the letter of credit. And then I'd be, well, you know, depending on what that costs, we might have to find external funding for that. And EDI or the county, you know, those are possible but unlikely sources. You know, we can always go ask. So there's every time we peel the onion, there's another one of these things that's in the way.
So I'd like a little bit of time to digest, but I have one other comment. And that's that, to the degree that anything I say at a commission meeting matters, I want this to matter, what I'm about to say, and that is that I really appreciate the efforts of you, Chris and Andrew, and steadfastly pursuing this pathway, and trying to make it work. Obviously this is disappointing news, and obviously we all want to be complimented for a win. And this isn't a win, but you worked really hard. I know it, and our friends at the port have worked really hard to deliver a positive outcome for the community. And I wish you could celebrate that. It's hard to celebrate when we hear this kind of news, but I want you to know I celebrate.
But
your
remember,
efforts.
we got Point Roberts. And
Yeah.
that's a win.
No,
And it's a big one.
And we're gonna figure out how to regroup and still make a difference. I understand that, but I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate your steadfast efforts on all of this.
Well, thank you. And really, it's Andrew on our team and then Angela Bennett for the PUD Association have been tigers in this whole thing.
Gina.
Yeah, and Gina.
And everybody at the port.
You did a good job of explaining that. Both of you did.
Yeah, you did. I just want to share my fellow commissioners' disappointment and, you know, but also, you know, approach that with curiosity. So, if we want to improve how this works, it starts with the WSBO office, right? Washington State Broadband Office.
Mhm.
It feels to me like corporate welfare, right? And then at the same,
Again.
and then,
Sorry.
and then at the same time, I understand that people that live in these areas.
It doesn't feel like corporate welfare.
Yeah, no, I know.
It is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too, but,
But and
these
most,
customers mostly care that they're being served, right? Served is best. Like at the end of the day, just to be honest, from their perspective is like, hooray, we got,
Yeah.
you know, broadband. So, just to add some reality to that, but it's the WSBO office that we need to take task with. Is that correct?
well, I don't know about taking task because they're bound by what the federal government is offering as a funding opportunity.
Just tell me who I yell at.
Well-
Maybe we should invite Rick Larson to our meeting.
Well, or I guess Maria Cantwell has been front and center on this whole thing, and she's been really, really good about it. You know, that because it was her office that organized the whole meeting with Zipley, wasn't it, last year?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so there's an example of a federal official very, very involved in, or at least her staff, but you know, I guess Andrew shared some other news with me this morning. In fact, right now we've got a congressional hearing.
Yes.
You wanna at the federal level.
Yes, there's a federal oversight committee right now with NTIA. NTIA is the administrator of the BEAD funds, which is the NOFO we've been referring to. And so there's, I believe on the right is questioning the timeliness of the BEAD rollout because we're into year 3 already. And then there's some other provisions that NTIA put on the states when they've developed their broadband plans under BEAD, which are things like, you know, setting like rates for what end users pay. And so there's some areas there that they're evaluating right now on the feasibility of BEAD and whether it will actually allow for internet for all like the intended. And we know that there's guidance that was just released recently on allowing for other technologies. So priority one is of course fiber, but you could also have, you know, wireless and things like that. So the lowest common denominator, of course, and then to spread the dollars farthest would be one of these alternative technologies. So there's kind of these considerations
Yeah.
happening at the federal level.
You know, it was only about 100 years ago that we were dealing with the rural electrification process. And I wish we could have learned some of our lessons from then and apply them now.
Mm.
That seems very similar to me.
Thank you,
though.
Drew.
Thank you.
Yes,
Great-
yeah. thank
Great
you.
report. Thank you. Even if it wasn't what we wanted to hear.
Yeah. I was gonna- That's the hardest kind of report to give.
Well, next up is adjudication.
Let's lighten it up.
We're on for the court hearing on the 26th. Ecology has submitted its claim form and proposed summons to the court. I've looked at it. There are some things I may do differently, but I will just I can move it closer. Yeah. Is it on? Yep. So adjudication, court hearing, it's 26 in the morning. The ecology has presented its proposed summons and claim form. We're reviewing that. Don't anticipate any significant comment on that at this time. And then the ecology has indicated it may not be filing and serving until November, but we'll know more maybe after the 26th of September. That's about all I have at this moment.
One thing I would, well, two things. One, if ecology says they're going to do it in November, we all know as you creep close to Thanksgiving, there's kind of a dead zone that extends until after New Year's. So when somebody says November, you know, it could very well be mid-January. Yeah, just,
So we'll have to wait and see.
yeah.
Well, would your-
When we get the summons, we have 1 year to put the respond and file it.
So, but what you're saying is you don't have any substantive.
I've
claim.
done one review of the form, well, 2 reviews. I haven't discussed it yet with Matt Wells. We are trying to set a time for this afternoon. I don't foresee anything significant. I've kind of taken the position that major in the major, minor in the minors on this, and that unless it's something major issue, I don't intend on having the PUD lead out on an objection just because it's minor, you know, issue, even if we disagree.
And so what we have yet to hear from the other parties, the city and the ag community.
I doubt we're gonna hear many from anybody. We will hear probably, I've heard rumors that some of the A community may object to the form. I can send it to the commission so you have it.
Please do.
Yeah, and but I don't anticipate.
Your draft of the.
We have earlier drafts and then ecology went back for 3 months and revised it. It's all one form or small or large, and you kind of have to go, if you fit into box A, go to section A. If you fit in box B, go to section B. If you're industrial, do this. If you're municipal, do this. If you're ag, do this, you know, so it's kind of
Tax form.
like a tax form. So,
How
And
exciting.
we know how easy those are.
so,
And we always look at it through the lens of, you know, what does this have to do with our claims?
yeah,
And if we think we can submit our claims in a defensible way, we're okay with the form. And even though we may see flaws that may apply for other claim types, that's not
not
our
our
water to
issue.
carry.
Candidly, our biggest focus will be, does there anything in responding affect our position regarding the municipal water law and the disagreements with ecology? Does a form cause us to concede some form of a position? And if so, we will probably submit it with a reservation of objection.
Any questions?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
So I've had some casual conversations with people on, with the forum, and with private well owners. There's a general concern about that, figuring out where that boundary is between, you know, just purely residential and more complex water needs on a private well.
Well, and I could just speak to that because that's some of the things I highlighted when I went, I did look at the private well owners just for contextually and. You know, you have to follow this in the rubric of state law. And so. And then in the adjudication there, where do you streamline a small well owner or not? For instance, the exempt well for stock watering doesn't have a 5,000 gallons per day limit.
Right,
So if you're a stock watering well, that's an exempt well, exemption from having to obtain a paper certificate to have a valid water right or water use. Is that part of the small well user streamline process, or do you inform, or do you go through a more extensive or different process where, so that's a difficult way to divide it. You have a single family domestic well, which is an exempt well, or you could have a group domestic under an exempt well to roughly six homes on an exempt well. So do you separate your process for the smaller exempt well versus a larger exempt well? So that's what ecology has essentially done in this form of trying to pair off the smaller exempt wells from what might be a larger exempt well, all having, if you read the tea leaves and where does it go in the future, likely to say they're going to propose a process that's streamlined, if you will, or diversion from the general adjudication process to a streamlined process for the small well users. I'm just guessing what they're going to do, but the way they've structured the form, the tea leaves indicate they're going to do that. Propose that to the court. Is that right? I don't know why intellectually from a water lawyer's perspective, why would you differentiate between a single residential exempt well versus a 4-home exempt well? They're both exempt. They both have validity questions. Four exempt wells could have for single homes could have a greater effect than one well serving 4 homes. So why is 4 wells streamlined? So there's policy choices that ecology is making in this that cumulatively could have an adverse effect on in-stream flows. If you're
one drop,
pardon?
one drop.
That's the theory. So but it's they're responding to the political pressure of the residential exempt well owners and trying to have a simplified process. So that's just John Sitkin waxing for a moment here, and I apologize.
So just to complete the thought, related to that, also is the environmental caucus and the ag caucus. So they actually agree on one thing, and that is to not have minimized conversion of ag land into residential land. Because it creates more exempt wells. So there's a concern and efforts that they're talking about that might have an impact on objections too. I just wanted to share that.
And the last thing on adjudication is John and I are both on the panel for adjudication with Bill Clark at the Water Week, at the Water Conference over in Spokane next week or the week after.
I think it's 25th. It's the
Yeah,
day
the
before
week
the-
after, yeah.
I'll just say, Commissioner, my response to that, the ag community and the environmental community is was the failure of county planning, county council, county planning commission over the last 20 years to allow the suburbanization of rural areas. That's a political statement of my client.
I do have a question. We kind of alluded or compared this process to taxes a little bit, and there's resources out there for community members that need help with their taxes. Do we anticipate, because it would be confusing for DOE, which is a party, for ecology, which is a party that is actually suing people to try to help them fill out their forms. Is that something that the county can do? Like, because this is a lawsuit and there's parties involved, is the county going to be, if the county's a party at some point?
At some point, the county will be a party because it does have a water right for a well for some services out at some parks and things like that. But so
So who can help the regular
there is,
people?
that is part of the purpose of Monday. Say that. There is an effort to discuss with the local bar, making some lawyers available, like a Vista program type of thing. Or street law type of program, just would lawyers make themselves available to help people. And that hasn't got a lot of traction because a lot of those lawyers are saying I'm representing parties that are conflicted. So it's they are trying to develop how do they get resources. And yes, I've expressed that continually to ecology. It's you're the plaintiff, but you're coming to somebody say, I'm the plaintiff, may take your water interest away, but I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Really, that seems kind of at odds. So they need to find a different way to engage the community. We've been talking that for a year plus.
So I talked to the Ag Water Board last week, and they took some of the grant money that came out through the Watershed Management Board or directly from the county. I forget how the funds flowed, but and they set up office hours to help people figure out what their claims actually were. They would pull it up, print it out, in there and hand them, everything that they needed to file a claim. Or validate their claim. And they're looking for funding again, only now it's to help people fill out the forms. And they are just looking for dollars so that they can have office hours with an attorney to help fill forms out. So there's, it's pointed at ag, but it is a group that really is kind of after it to try and help part of the community. So and I'll be in a position to advocate for funding for that. And I plan on doing
And some of
that.
the funding, I think, from budget provides over a year and a half ago was allocated to try to do some training.
Do you
Yeah.
think there's any place for the conservation district to offer an educational sort of,
I think so. I wouldn't be surprised that I haven't.
okay,
George Bob's.
Well, there's a new executive director.
yeah.
They're having an event on October 2nd. I got an email.
Oh, yeah, I did too. I did it last year. It's a good one. It's a good tour. Thank you. Let's move
Thank
on
you.
to the geothermal update.
So I only have a single update on that, and then I'll turn it over to Andrew. He may have another update, but you guys are up to date on where we are on the studies, and that's just going to be ongoing. We won't get results for that for probably another 8 or 9 months. So that's the kind of update you're going to get on geothermal until then is, unless there's some radical breakthrough in technology or something, and we're tracking that all the time, and there hasn't been today, but we're meeting with a group of customers this afternoon. The Whatcom Unbound or Whatcom Unlimited or something. It's a small political group. We're going to meet in this gal's home and do our geothermal overview. They were interested in hearing it. And so we're going to go down there this afternoon, maybe 20, 30 people there. Spend a couple hours doing that today.
Nice.
So there's going to be a lot of stuff like that, and we're going to continue doing it.
Andrew, do you have
No further.
nothing else? Okay. Great. Lastly, strategic planning.
Yes, now that you guys have seen our proposal on the water side, it's time to get strategic plan on the calendar.
Mhm.
So my question to you is, do you want to attempt to clear the second half of the meeting like we did for the water presentation? Or do you want to schedule a separate meeting to start the strategic planning effort? And just have an open public meeting workshop? Not necessarily looking for any decisions, just,
Yeah,
to get it kicked off.
I'm leaning into scheduling something separate. Our meetings are pretty full anyway, so.
Yeah, and it's usually 2 hours and then
Yeah.
just tack it on. It takes energy to,
Yeah,
I want fresh energy too.
yeah.
So I favor separate.
Yes, separate.
Okay, then I'll work with Joseph and we'll start looking for a date for that. And the only other thing is, I think we can do this internally. Do you guys want a third party consultant?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't think we need it, especially for this, for what we're doing currently. There might be other things, specific tasks for, but on this, Chris and I had met and talked about strategic planning process. But what we had talked about is that at the first meeting should be to go over strategic planning process so that the commission can adopt the process, first and foremost. And then, of course, then execute that. Is consistent with what we talked about?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'll get something on the calendar.
Fridays are gonna be less available for me, just FYI. We always did it on Fridays.
Yeah.
Fridays are for football.
What, oh, yeah. We can do
Oh,
Friday
I-
morning?
Maybe.
And one other old business item. We will have a public hearing at the next meeting.
All right.
On initiative 2117, and we're gonna send out information on it to pro and con groups. Already done, great.
Great.
And we have to provide equal opportunity for both sides to hear that. We have a draft resolution prepared, and we will circulate that.
So, can we talk about this?
Sure.
No, okay, so, in the past, I don't recall the commission ever doing this kind of process. In the past, what we've done as a commission is asked the general manager to write a letter. And
Well, if
it's-
you're gonna pass a resolution, you have to, there's a prescribed process in law of how you want to do this.
okay. And in the past, we haven't done it that way for on a,
Or we
Yes.
have had staff reach out at times for opponents and pros or we've just said, hey, we want to comment on the pending bill. Rarely have, in my recollection, is the commission has taken a position on a pending initiative
Yeah.
on the ballot.
okay,
It may be on legislation, which is different. But it's a ballot process.
Yeah, and if you guys will recall, everything that we did on the adjudication legislation last year, you directed me and I worked with John and we just did that.
yeah.
But there was
I'm
not a
just-
resolution that was
Yeah.
ever called for.
So this is a unique circumstance and we're responding to it accordingly. Okay. I want to just mention that there was some interest in other initiatives that were the folks mentioned to me, and I just want to mention it. There's a their interest had to do with initiative 2066. It has to do with natural gas. Of course, our PUD doesn't do anything with respect to natural gas. I think I've already shared with the commission that it was got a lot, my experience in talking to public, obviously I've been doing a lot of that. The public is very concerned about natural gas. And it's a very contentious issue. And at this point, without having heard from the other commissioners, I'm not sure that whether it's a good idea for us to get involved in a position on any other initiative, but I'd like to hear from the other.
Yeah,
commissioners.
I don't know that we can in an official way, can we? So the RCW that allows us to draft a resolution against this ballot initiative says that we can do so because it affects us. Is that right? That it's like in line. Do you want to bring it up? That it, and this doesn't affect us.
And I think, 2117 would roll back the CCA, the Climate Commitment
Right.
Act. And the Climate Commitment Act is where we've secured the funding for our geothermal
Right.
test wells. So
Right.
it absolutely
Absolutely
is front and center. Yeah.
Right.
So I can draw a straight line. The nexus is clear. And with natural gas,
Kind of muddy for us.
yeah.
Go ahead. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to hear. Commissioner Legacy's comments.
I don't, there's a lot to be said for staying in your lane, right?
Right.
And while this may be an important initiative with regional, if not greater impacts, our job is as a rate-based utility is to focus on things that affect our customers, right? So given that, I don't see how we really expand too much in that.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I
Look
heard
up the
from.
statute before I say them. It's.
We don't have to belabor it. I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
It was an FYI for you guys, so.
It just says no elective official employee may use the office or no agency may use or authorize use of facilities or assisting a campaign for a person or opposition or promotion of any ballot proposition. This includes all the things we do here.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have a linkage of your interests. So action taken in open meeting by a legislative body or board or commission to express a collective decision or to vote upon a motion or resolution requires notice and members of the public are afforded equal opportunity for expression of view. And so that's even if you guys express a view, we have to give the other side, we're pro or con, that opportunity.
So as an example, we could pass some resolution on children's tax levy. But obviously it would be meaningless for the PUD,
Right.
getting to Todd's point.
I think I made that point too.
Yeah.
But he is a man.
Yeah. That's fair. Sorry.
So then we leave it to 2117.
Yes, yeah, I just wanted to close that subject.
Joseph, you heard from anybody yet?
No, sir, have not heard one way or the other, but I did submit to both organizations, and in fact, I wanted to commend that notion to do that, because I had been in previous employment privy to resolutions that were made to man, my brain is not functioning today, but pro or con to a piece of legislation, or in this case, an initiative that affected a port or another public entity. And honestly, in that instance, there was no submittal of two other pro or con agencies. It was just, hey, we're looking at this, our commission is going to vote one way or the other. If you have an opinion, show up. So the fact that we actually actively engaged pro-con organizations is very cool. I thought that was a good on us for being making people forcefully aware that we are looking.
Yeah, thank you.
And did we, and I apologize for not knowing this myself, but did we get a hold of Cascadia Daily and the Bellingham Herald and all them? When we did
Yes, we put a notice in the Bellingham Herald as the newspaper of record, and let them know about the public hearing or published in 2 days. Next, well, I believe actually tomorrow and then next Wednesday, and then so that folks will be completely aware.
I'm not sure if I didn't give a direction for Cascade Weekly. I said the typical paper of our that we utilize. Nothing, you can always do more. So if you want to send the notice out to Cascade Weekly, great. Linden, Northern Light, all that.
I'm just thinking that's something that Ralph Schwartz and others would routinely cover.
Could be.
And I mean, the point would be to get some press coverage that,
Yeah,
hey, here's something that,
Mhm.
Our little old PUD is worried about, and here's why, and they should be, and here's their stance. And, that would be, if we get an article written about it, I think that would be as helpful
Yeah.
as almost anything.
Yeah,
And if we could
this is the
get that
season
for
too.
not the cost of a legal ad, that would be cool.
Oh,
So,
Saving money is good.
and I did do some research trying to identify who might be the supporters of the initiative or groups that were supporting it. And we had some email addresses, mail addresses too. As
That-
well as that group of opposition.
That sounds a little more like communications than actual public notice.
Well, we did both.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, the public notice was issued and posted, and we chose those, specifically those 2 dates for publication, because those are actual dates that they print, so they don't print daily. So they print certain days a week, so that's why they're happening on Wednesday. For the consecutive weeks.
Great. Boy, that was on all under strategic plan update, I think.
yeah, we went sideways there, but that's.
Yeah.
At the end.
Okay. Moving on to new business with the budget work session.
And I believe that should be Annette.
I'll promote you, Annette. Do you want to be promoted, Annette? All right.
Here she comes.
This morning.
There she
Gonna
is.
be promoted or what? So luckily it's not a long term. So every year, we've already begun our budget session, our budget preparation, but we take a piece of the commission meeting to get a feedback from you. Excuse me, to kind of get any kind of feedback of what you want our budget to look for or anything you want us to focus on. You know, that's outside of the normal, the operations and that. So sometimes they're very quick.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So two things. One is last meeting, and that we had a great presentation on the water plant one. And it's important to me in the budget presentations this fall for me to be able to track what is specific to the, like is the steps towards that and part of that bigger projects that we're approving in the budget, how that shows up in the budget. And I don't know how you would do that, but you always seem to produce extremely, helpful charts in that direction. So hopefully you can do more magic in that regard.
Well, I think what we normally do, and we can do more because clearly it hasn't been effective in communicating, but what we normally do is say,
Well,
okay.
I think I've been happy. I just want to make sure that continues to be.
So what we normally do is a 10-year pro forma of what our planned spending is that would include the arc of the larger plan. And then the budget itself is the next year's segment of that plan. So we would, I just keep forgetting the numbers, RW 38? Is that that's the plant one rebuild. So you'll see the budget for that. And then in the pro forma, you'll see the plant one rebuild, you'll see the plant two enhancements, the pipeline, all that. We may not call those out separately, but that's where in the 10-year look, that's where that's coming from.
Okay.
And we don't forecast rates out in the 10-year forecast because you really need to do that year by year as you get forecasted revenues and expenditures each year, which comes out of the budget. So the rates we only do for the following year.
The other piece, the other question or request is regarding bond issues. We talked about different kinds of bond issues, of course, and then probably for that project having to do more than one bond issue. I think you were talking about two.
Mm-hmm. Two tranches, yeah.
And then also the different types of bond issues. I have specific thoughts about that maybe it's better you and I talk about, Chris, offline first to figure out if they're reasonable.
Well, I'm happy to talk about that. The issue would be, from a policy perspective, it's, go ahead and do the project and finance it the most cost-effective way you can. And then we'll figure that out and bring that back to you, and you'll see that in the contract.
Yeah.
It's important for you guys to understand the difference between general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, various forms of fixed term financing, floating financing.
And
those
so,
are all the options that we look at.
and the two categories of general revenue and what was the other category?
Rate. There's general obligation and revenue bonds.
And
Those are the two different
with
ones.
regards to the revenue bond, there's understanding to how much the risk is on the public. Affects my thinking. Meaning we've got customers who we are dedicated to serve, and then we've got the public. And so I am concerned about us thoroughly studying and documenting the degree that we're putting potential risk on citizen Whatcom County over a big capital project that has certain risk with it. So this is an area that I want to explore further and make sure we do everything we can to not just protect our customers, but also protect the citizens of Whatcom County.
Yeah, so in general, the revenue bonds have a higher interest rate than general obligation bonds, and because they rely on the revenue. Underlying the revenue bond is still the tax authority. So you've still got that. You have to honor the bonds if it goes into default for any reason. So you end up at the same place, but you do it more expensively with a revenue bond. So I hear what you're saying about the apparent risk transfer. The other thing is if you have to pay more for the revenue bonds, then you're actually increasing the risk of one of those customers not being able to fulfill their obligation through the revenue. You know, you're making it more expensive. So as I said, if you guys approve the project and you say, yeah, go forth and finance this the most cost-effective way, then we should have the conversation after that. You know, we think this is the most cost-effective way, and here's why.
Yeah, sure, yeah, I understand that. It'd be great to break it up, but obviously how you pay for it does affect what kind of project you do. For example, if we didn't have the ability to raise enough money.
I
to
just
do
spontaneously got all
bigger
quiet.
project, we'd figure out how to do a smaller project. I mean, so that, financing is always impacts your capital decision, how much money you can get. This is just a conversation.
Well, if you're going to do the project and you're not going to finance it, then you've got to recover it in current rates. So that's your other option.
That's,
Yeah, that's not one I'd recommend at this
yeah,
point.
it's not feasible, yeah. And then multi-year contracts, of course,
Mhm.
that's another way to do it.
So,
Take or pay.
man. So, you know, it seems to me, just from a financing perspective, that we're looking at going out and getting an obligation, a bond from wherever we get it from, whether it's revenue or general obligation, or however we buy that bond on the open market, or however we do that. And then we take that money and we pay for the project to serve our customers. But, and a lot of times your customers can't afford to pay for that all at once, or to do the installment on it. Is there a way going forward that we might be able to have conversations with our large customers that have significant financial resources, and have and remove some of the cost of the overhead cost of that funding by having them, in a sense, bond themselves?
I know in the past that is not, because typically we can get money cheaper
Okay,
than public corporations.
okay.
You're asking one of them to go either lend themselves in their own capital
Yep.
reserves. That's a big internal question for BP America,
It-
you know.
It
Yeah, I'm
is.
not sure that this will get to their radar screen to look at them.
Sure.
Yeah, or go to the private market, and generally then the rates, in essence, the rates are higher.
Yeah.
The other downside of a revenue bond versus GO bond is that there may be bond covenants that have to be negotiated to try to secure the revenue stream, so it could be. And I don't know if this would be what the market would require, some limitation of the use of the revenues. To focus on the repayment of the debt.
Mhm.
rather than-
Prioritization of the debt and subject, yeah.
And limit the use of the fund or even internal loans.
Yeah.
For different enterprises could be restrained by the revenue. I don't know, but that in theory could happen. It depends on what the marketplace wants to negotiate.
And remember, the market is used to dealing with utilities where they come and they say, okay, we're going to do a revenue bond. Because when I worked down in Snohomish, it was revenue bonding. And the reason was they had 300,000 customers, and they had 5 different contracts for all 300,000 customers, whether you were residential, small commercial, large commercial, industrial, and large industrial. That was it. And here we've got, for every one of our industrial customers, a unique contract. And we're in the process of beginning to rewrite that. So we have a standard form contract that, but we're not there yet. We're going to work through that.
I was just spitballing if there was a
No,
way
that's a good idea.
to try to, think outside the box for funding. And
If
Yeah.
they thought they could do some internal borrowing that could generate a lower rate for themselves, I'm sure they'd put that out.
if they're listening now and we can't see who's online and that appeals to them, feel free to reach out.
What's the longest term contract that we currently have with our customers?
Maybe they're 10 or 20 years.
20 years is a baseline contract. I can't remember some of the water.
Yeah.
There may be 20 with rights to renew.
Yeah.
So I would like, as part of our budget work session, I would like a significant discussion on depreciation. and how we operate with our depreciation that shows up in our annual audited reports, and what that looks like, how much of it is on facilities or on buildings versus on equipment, that type of stuff. In the future, I guess actually next session, I would like a little bit of time in executive session to talk about negotiations and the strategy therein too. And then while this is related to finance, it's not necessarily part of the budget work session, but I know that we're required every time to authorize the financial reports and to approve the claims, but we don't see the income that really offsets some of that. So like, I think there's a couple in here where we paid BPA and a significant some money. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for better understanding and education of our finances as an organization, to just throw one sheet in the back that says, hey, these claims came in and we paid this much through, but it was really a pass through and we had this much income come in.
So Annette does something that's akin to a monthly income statement, shares it with me, because I like meeting payroll.
You're
It's just a
asking
thing.
for a profit and loss statement?
Or a balance sheet or whatever it is. We just an additional bit of information that shows, because we're spending a lot of money here and we're approving that, but we're also not looking at the income that comes in as well.
Yeah, so in a public entity, it's a statement of position, not a balance sheet.
Okay.
And they're different, subtly different, but different. And I think we only do the statement of position once a year formally. Is that correct?
Well,
You could do it.
we do it monthly, but we publish it monthly, but we also have a monthly that dashboard.
Yeah.
And against the highlights.
Maybe we should just start sharing that with them. Yeah. Yeah, or Annette could just send it out when she sends it over to me. Just so you guys have it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
And
be.
It's just not
Right,
something
yeah.
that the commission has been much interested in the past. And I wanted to warn you, when you start asking our CFO to make a presentation on depreciation and she's smiling, be
Oh.
careful.
I'm all ears. No, I think it's great. Thank you. That's it for I'm looking forward to the budget work session.
Okay. Let's move on to the action item. Ooh,
Thank you.
award bid to PNP Excavating.
Yes, hello again. So I'm here to request approval for the work to be done at the D-Station. As you know, the D-Station is the main delivery point of water for BP. This is to create a redundant line within the station, so if we need to do any future work, we have a way to keep water flowing. And one thing that I wanted to mention is, even though we did only have one bidder for this round, it was the bid was only about 1% over the engineer's estimate, so it was almost spot on to the engineer's estimate. So it's pretty close to that.
Why do we only have one bidder?
I think it was partly because this was the third round for essentially the same project. We had a little bit of difficulty with some of our bid documents. They were maybe a little bit out of date.
Mm.
And so I think just because it was the third round, I think some of the initial bidders found it maybe not worth their time.
How many, do you remember offhand how many bidders we had on the first round?
We had 3 the first, 3 the second.
So the first round, all of the bids we asked you to reject because they were significantly over the estimate, like more than double. And the second round, that wasn't the issue. It was that one of the bidders objected to our documentation and they were right. And so we had to go back and pull the bids and reissue, and here we are.
Just a quick question. You don't see this related to, so I'm on the Ferry Advisory Committee for Whatcom County, and there we've noticed a problem with the decreasing number of shipyards in Puget Sound and the lack of ability to even get dry dock time or competitiveness in bidding. Are we seeing some of that here? Is that, or is this just a,
I think there is some turnover that might be similar to what you're describing, but one thing that has changed in the middle of this calendar year was it's the MRSC roster, which is kind of taking over our small works roster. And so kind of, there's been some challenges on getting that off the ground, but also I'm looking at maybe the opportunities of other entities to be able to bid for our projects.
and is PNP, are they a union shop?
I know.
Thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, on to commissioner reports.
Before we do per diems, I
Sure.
just want to take a moment, to just as kind of reminder on per diems and a little background. If you remember, per diem statute says, makes a determination, per diem is supposed to be for the benefit of the district. So who makes that determination? You can delegate that to a general manager, but that put the general manager odds with the commission saying, am I going to approve one of my commissioners per diem? If I don't think it's for the benefit of the district, I'm going to put that person at odds. So the commission a few years ago decided to move away from that. We had a commissioner, well, typically it would be the commission that makes the decision of what's for the benefit of the district, not an individual. So, but we had a commissioner who was resistant to voting on what another commissioner thought was right for them. And so we kind of ended up with this hybrid situation where you have a list of activities that are predetermined. And then you have what things that come up, or what the commission has said in the past is that people would submit that in writing, what the event was in advance, so the commissioners knew in advance. And then we treated it rather informally, rather than following strictly Robert Rules of Order that there has to be a motion, second, and approval. We said, well, if a commissioner doesn't object, it's deemed approved. And that was kind of the conciliation to a former commissioner who didn't want to opine. So, but that brings, you can't, so we're at and just as a reminder, you have to bring forward the date, the event, and let us know so we can put in the record a document. If the commission said we do that in advance in writing. So we have a trail for an audit purpose of what was the event. And then we can say, well, the commission was disclosed, here's on the record. The request at least sent in before, and we have a trail, and we're not doing a formal required vote. The dilemma that comes up is that someone comes and says, I have this thing next Tuesday. It's the, Flight to Mars meeting. And I think that's a value. I'm going to go. It's at 11 a.m. I think it's on Tuesday. Okay. We don't have a tracking unless someone has happened to get a note, and then we can throw it into the minutes. So that's why the commission had said you do it in advance in writing, present it. And I think we have started to fall away from that.
Okay.
And the TF is a reminder to do that in advance so we can get the trail. And otherwise, the alternative is to say, let's go back to having a formal motion, approval, and have it in the minutes. And we tried to have a nuance. The art is to say not be so formalistic in the process. So just as a reminder.
I also want to say on forms, one of the things that's helpful now that we get to see everybody's forms is that there's a little check mark that says, is this on the list? And then it has the date. So if it's not on the list, write the date that we approved it. So that even if people do have to go back and look at the minutes, it's just easy to see that it was approved. But yeah,
It's the TF reminder.
yeah, thank you.
And I would like to remind the commissioners that everybody did submit those to me maybe twice. And then it just stopped. And so shame on me for not following up. But on the other hand,
It's our job.
it's your per diems. And just, if you could just send me a note in advance of the meeting, and then it'll go out with the package, or we'll deliver it at places here. And then as long as you don't object, it's deemed approved, and we're
That's
off
for
to
the
races.
non-standard.
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
Thank
not
you.
the
It's
ones.
standard on the list, and your resolution already been approved. Don't need to. That's the check the box on the form and say it's on the list.
So it should be in the email rather than disclosed in the meeting, then, is what you're saying.
Somehow in writing in advance.
If you-
As long as it's presented in writing and then it is mentioned.
Mentioned here so the commission can say.
Meeting,
Yeah.
we're good, because so I just need to be able to document that in some form, and the RCW actually states that it is by law supposed to be the motion second, but we could do the hybrid.
So, is it okay then, if we dispose it at the meeting? Get the head nods from the commission and then send an email that here are the, as in the commission meeting, here are the special event that I'm going to, the commission group. Is that fine too?
So the issue would be. No,
No, okay.
yeah, you need to send it out in advance and
So that it gets on the agenda.
so it gets on the agenda and then you guys have the option to, you know,
Say yes
to
or no.
contest
Yep.
it. Yeah. And then if you don't contest it, it's deemed approved.
Gotcha.
And is that on the, and so when does that email need to come out from us?
Well, I mean, the week before the commission meeting, you just need to get it to me. And then, because we can introduce it at places and it can just be part of the
Okay.
normal.
Yeah, the agenda is usually finalized like Wednesday before.
Wednesday
meeting.
before, yeah.
So before Wednesday.
Right, and then I can have, I can put that under the beginning section of the agenda, so these are the suggested meetings, so the public's aware.
But I feel very confident about this process.
So as,
Rather it not be
If
harder
something-
for Wednesday because like,
If,
Like I've
if something weird comes up,
by the end of the week would be better. Because like we get our claims report on Monday, we got our claims report for the meeting today, yesterday. I mean, there's a lot of inputs we get related to the meeting on the Monday.
yeah, those inputs shouldn't have anything to do with you scheduling an external meeting. So, I mean,
Yeah. No, they don't, but you know. It's Wednesday prior to, it
Yeah.
seems a little bit more challenging for me. I'll do it, if that's what we all decide we wanna do, but.
I think Wednesday, and then if there's, if there's extenuating circumstances, right? If there's like a meeting that on a Thursday that's afterwards, that.
Yeah, I guess I can just plan
Somebody-
that when I get the agenda, it's also my reminder to reply with, if I've got any,
no, like for
non-standard
instance,
preemptive.
if Sapal was to call up today and say, Jamie, I want you to be at the county council tomorrow.
Yeah,
And we're going to be discussing something, you need to be there.
which could happen.
It could happen, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
it's
or,
happened.
Mayor Lund, or there could be some other,
Things
but
that have happened,
in a
yeah.
case like that, it would be rather extraordinary, not something that I've seen since I've been here, but it could happen. I would say send me an email. Do not send it to the other commissioners. And let me go ahead and handle that exception.
Okay,
But, it would have to be, it was after that Wednesday, typically it would be if you get a call this afternoon or tomorrow
Mhm.
and they want you someplace on Friday. That's, there's
Everybody
nothing we can
wants
do
a
about
piece of
that.
me.
Yeah. And, but, that's one where we should have the ability to deal with it.
Yes, yeah.
yeah, so just my mental note is, when I get the agenda from you guys, I'll respond with if I've got it to you.
Well, I think the idea is that it's included on the agenda so that you don't wait until the agenda comes out. They want to put it here on.
Yeah.
upcoming
So it'd be the
request.
Tuesday close of business. The week
Before the
before.
commission meeting, yeah.
Yes, so that it
Okay,
could,
just a
be on
week
the
before the
agenda.
next commission meeting.
Right.
Put it
Yeah.
in my head,
yeah,
I remember the
yeah.
point,
And
okay.
speaking of reminders, get your reimbursements in by Friday, this Friday.
Yeah.
Because $15 on the weekend.
one thing that I think would help for a future commissioner would be maybe. Well, one, I'm not sure where the list is. Maybe I missed that, but where the list of pre-approved kind of.
The resolutions. It's been amended.
Yeah,
And to that as a point of order for, because Commissioner Williams, you came on in May.
Yes,
I don't know, based on the last 16 minutes, that two things that should be updated are the appointment to the various boards that you were all on. I believe that's passed your resolution, correct? The council?
That has been a resolution that's been addressed in the beginning of the year, and I think we did it by consent by allocating who's gonna be
We do.
doing what when Christine left and you came on board.
they
Yeah.
did that before I came on board.
Yeah,
They
and we may
divvied
not
it
have
up.
captured that in detail in the minutes.
And that should be then revised, and then the other piece would be revising that list based on a new commissioner seat, and both of those being resubmitted as resolutions and approved so that they're then, or even as action items as part of the meeting so that they can be documented in notes of, okay, this is now updated with the new commissioner. This
Yeah,
is-
I understand that there wasn't going to be any with an interim position, there wasn't going to be any real official, like you take this or that for the few months that you're here, but looking forward for a new commissioner, I think that's a learning opportunity for both for them and for the PUD to make coming on board a little easier as a learning
I
opportunity.
think what the commission will address, since the new commissioner will take their position in November. And typically this has been evaluated in January. I think the commission may just hold this until the January meeting, do it once rather than do it on the eve of Thanksgiving, one meeting in December. And then
Yeah,
go. in
so
January.
every year we reallocate who does what, and it's an annual resolution that we update. And it gives us an opportunity to rotate, and plus the president of the commission can change, and, so it's important to notify WPUDA and everybody else that we deal with on kind of who's on first. So we do that every year routinely.
Right. It's just for a new commissioner, it might be a learning opportunity so that they're not just oh yeah, there's a list that tells you, and where is that list and every.
And back to the onboarding.
Yeah,
Question really
yes.
is really, where's the per diem resolution?
Yeah.
Here it is, that goes over. Chris, I'm speaking to the formal action to update it. I'm not sure if it's worth doing at the eve of Thanksgiving with one
Oh,
more meeting
probably not.
in December when we're gonna do it in January anyways.
And I think Commissioner Arnett, you're the last one that's gone through that formal process. And you were here when we allocated out the offices and had that discussion. And then also we immediately hooked you up with WPUDA for the
Right.
orientation work that they do. And I think you found that
Yeah.
valuable.
Have you seen the list?
I don't think I've seen.
Can you send everybody the list?
Absolutely.
Because there's other things other than just the
Yeah.
committees that you're on. There's like an hour-long phone call with the
Yeah.
GM, and all of your WAPUDA meetings are on the list. You don't have to ask to go to those to put it down, but it's a good FYI when we're having conversations
Right.
to know who's going when, but those are on the list. So let's.
And if I did get it, I missed it. I apologize. So
And we might have
Yeah,
handed it to you. I don't know.
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
So how do we handle tomorrow?
Well, I mean, we're just gonna have to start fresh today, right? We're just gonna have to do it.
Well,
the way that
no,
we-
today, I mean,
Yeah.
for the September 11th, you guys have all been invited. If you're attending, then, this is an acknowledgement of that, and
Yeah.
it's an appropriate per diem.
Yeah.
But really, we should have all sent emails a week ago.
We should have, yeah.
Except for me, because I'm on the YRO board, and so.
And it's on her, yeah.
Clarification, commission, what is tomorrow? Who is going? We'll put it in minutes.
Yeah, we will get to that when we start doing our actual reports.
Okay, okay.
Who wants to do an actual report?
I'll go.
Okay, good.
I'm going to tomorrow's thing.
That is the Puget Sound Partnership, yeah.
And if I do participate in anything on Thursday, that's on my nickel. Okay, so I'm not expecting anything from that. And then, oh, and this is my regular, I don't have to announce it, but I'm just letting you know, I'm going to EDI on Monday. And then Tuesday, Todd and I are carpooling out to WPUDA, and we'll be there through Friday,
And
And-
talking about the Seahawks.
talking about Seahawks in the car.
It's going to be a very quiet trip. We'll turn the radio up.
We're doing car karaoke. Come on.
You need to film the silence from Get Smarter.
We just won't have any songs about water on the radio, John.
Well, Blackwater, keep on moving.
And then our next commission meeting is on the 24th. So I'm covered till then. That's my per diems. I do have other items for commissioner for which we.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, the first thing I wanna repeat again about broadband is this change focus is a big deal. I don't need to say anymore, already said plenty about that. On energy, I might have mentioned this in a previous commission meeting. But the Columbia River Treaty specifically calls out additional transmission between Canada and the US. And that might be relevant to us, particularly if they upgrade the transmission that comes along the western side of BC and Washington State. That in combination with BC's decision to go with Markets Plus. I'm very curious about your thoughts on this, Chris, about if that might open up potential supply options for us.
So
in gen-
let me jump in just
Yeah,
for a
please, yeah,
sec,
go ahead.
because I mean, it's very, very complicated. So the issue with the transmission, that can be accomplished by physical construction or reconstruction of lines. It can also be accomplished by what's known as redispatch. And if you're not sending the Canadian entitlement north, then you have the ability to redispatch the line capacity south. So you essentially get more capacity without building more capacity. And that may very well be the outcome of the treaty. So, you know, yes, the treaty talks about transmission capacity. It doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to physically build it. And I think physically building it in general would be helpful depending on the path.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Also on energy, you may also be aware that there's been a push by the Senator Cantwell, as well as others to delay the decision
by BPA.
by BPA to select which to go with Markets Plus or California
EDAM, yeah.
EDAM. And I like that because there's more work that both parties need to do. And hopefully they're both doing the work to make it more appealing to us. And I can say we would only win from that. That's how I'm reading that. I'd like to know your thoughts on that too, if you'd like.
I disagree.
Oh, you mean delaying might be a bad idea?
It's a very bad idea. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This means that the investor-owned utilities have gotten to the elected officials and they've said, don't pay attention to the public power. They don't know what they're talking about. We need to get this done fast. Fast is California. And just as a reminder, the investor-owned community is not concerned about saving their customers money. They are concerned first and foremost about being able to pass their costs through. And so they want it done fast. That's their mantra. And
So it sounds like we're in agreement.
no. EDAM is fast, Markets Plus is better.
I know, but that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is that the push for delays.
So remember the leaning from BPA was to go to Markets Plus.
Yes.
And they were going to issue that as a final a record of decision this month. And now they've been convinced to delay. If they were going to go with Markets Plus this month, that would be a good thing for public power.
Yes, I
But-
agree with that.
Well, and now they've said delay. Why delay? It would be to do something else. And
Oh, I see your
more study is not going to get you there, because the bottom line is that by the time you're through phase 2 of 3 in the EDAM transition, you are fully and formally and permanently committed to California. And then they cannot do all the reorganization that they've claimed will be done in phase 3. And just take advantage of the West again, as they
I'm
have for
gonna
the
try
last
to be
30
optimist
years.
here and assume that this will also give Markets Plus an opportunity to spend more time with BPA.
Won't matter. Yeah, I'm not
You're
an
hopeful
optimist.
about the delay, okay.
Not at all. I think this is very bad news. And I think the PPC, if you read some of the documents they've sent out in the last couple of weeks and all the WPUDA statements on the position, they come down hard on the side of this is a bad deal. There shouldn't be delay. You should declare for Markets Plus and move on.
Yeah, well, come on, Chris, we know large corporations don't have that much influence on how things work. Sorry. Okay, moving on to water. We talked about the plans for September 11th and 12th. I also want to say what I think important to say is that there's potential for what's happened with the dam removal in the Klamath Basin to provide data and what a removal of a dam and habitat for the largest project on the West Coast. It's important to see what happens over the next couple of years, because that will be an important piece of information for what people will use either pro or against subsequent dam removal. And I'm paying attention to that for that reason. And then lastly is the biggest thing I have to say, and applies to our PUD's activities, and that is this Plan 1 project is a huge project. And I think we have to try to explore ways to get more public input on it. There's some decisions we're gonna make over the next few months that are gonna have a huge impact on the long-term future of this organization. 150, maybe $200 million is a lot of money. And I just think that I'm nervous about that. I mean, that's why I ran to get elected, and so I'm running again to get elected, to be able to make those decisions, and I'm willing to carry that responsibility, but I also recognize that I'd love to have a richer dialogue involving more opportunities for public input on that important decision. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. I'm willing to be curious and have a conversation about that. I'm done.
Thank you.
Well, I would just respond to your comment a little bit and remember back to one of the events that the PUD and the port held in Ferndale, I believe, about broadband.
Mhm.
And it was kind of an open town hall. And so maybe that's a starting point, is for the PUD to host an opportunity for the community to learn a little bit, but also have some input and just hear more and connect a little more, kind of in the same vein as us, throwing candy at the kids on the 4th of July, just an opportunity. So maybe there's a did I say at? Oh, yeah.
I threw them at the kids.
So, anyhow, I think we handed them to the kids actually. So, but, maybe that's an opportunity, a tool. So going forward with another type of event to start that conversation in the community. So, and then the only report I have is, I actually was at the courthouse for a different reason, a good reason. And I ran into Sat Paul, our county executive, and what occurred to me was an opportunity to just have a quick conversation with him about our Plant One work that's being done and the potential for water storage as related to the county's desire to have a wetlands mitigation bank. And I think that we need to make that a conversation point and expand that opportunity. Sat Paul was very receptive to that idea. I was not officially representing, it was just spitballing an idea of, is there a way to tie the county's desire for a wetland mitigation bank to our desire to have water storage and meet them in the middle? And so I think that there's an opportunity there. However you want to move forward on that, they're interested, they want to have a wetland mitigation bank. It's probably going to be a part of their comp plan going forward. And so I think that we're at the initial input stage for making that connection and tying it together. So, and then the only per diem request is I was wondering about potentially officially being nominated as a alternate to the Energy Northwest Board, if for going over in person to Tri-Cities in October, I believe they have. So I just wanted to ask how the other commissioners felt about that, unless you
Are
want.
you going?
I haven't decided yet.
Oh, okay. I would be okay with you going. Yeah.
So that would, I think, take
I think you
between-
have time to,
between now and then.
yeah, to
Yeah.
make sure it gets on the agenda for an actual.
I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I don't have anything off list. I'll just start saying that. So I will be, I will be at the Wacom Local Integrating Organization meeting tomorrow. I'll be the moderator. Looking forward to that. So,
Is that it? Sound-
yes, Puget
But
Sound
also
Partnership.
Watershed
Yeah.
Management Board.
Yes.
So there's about-
There's so many different names.
So not a per diem.
No, it is a
It
per
is.
diem, but it's on list.
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
Because she's our water representative at the Watershed Management Board.
Um,
The commissioner attending that, for my clarification, the first minutes is Commissioner Dishman.
If I go, I won't submit a per diem request.
I do want to say also that concert welcome conservation tour that everybody got an email for, I did that last year, lots of value in that.
Okay.
And I attended with Sharon Shoemake and Kaylee Galloway, so there was all good company, good tour. So I won't be going on it this time. And I had a question, and I'm just wondering if, did Puget Sound Energy ever get back to you on that? It has nothing to do with us really, but on the energy credit and how they applied that?
They did, and I'm kind of unsure how to share this, but I think the PUDs may have a self-inflicted gunshot wound here.
I'm worried about.
Yeah, so Puget Sound Energy looked at the legislation and they concluded that they could just send these out without soliciting input from the customers, and so they did. And they were able to dispense the funds, and
Every Puget Sound Energy customer.
that was my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were able to do that. I don't know why a PUD with residential electric customers wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
I made my parents try to apply to retire Eastern Washington. They didn't qualify. But it's just, it's
and that would be a Vista over there,
I can't
or one of the
remember.
PUDs.
Vista, I think,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. But it's just sort of, you've got one company blanketing it and then everybody else is not allowed to use it. And then,
And I think
And-
Puget just stood back and said, well, what's the intent? The intent's to offset higher energy prices that
Sure.
were caused by the CCA. Boom.
yeah,
And they just sent them out.
yeah, I wish everybody else would have just sent them out
Yeah,
because.
I think we got way too wrapped up as a public power community on the whole thing. Yeah.
And it's
simply
too late.
would have been
Has to be
better.
done by the 15th, right? So it's too late to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and every utility figured out what they were going to do and committed. So, if we wanted to talk the PUD Association to something different, it would have been 6 months ago.
That
We've
is
had to
so
do it.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
If this opportunity ever comes up again,
I'm sure
we
that
should
there
take
are,
a different approach.
I'm sure there are some PUDs that did,
Yeah,
that
and I
just,
hope that you're on the energy committee for
Yeah.
Waputa.
Yeah.
Maybe you should bring that up. I'm disappointed at this. But everybody else, PSC blanketed everyone with that. And then a lot of their customers that are probably actually struggling didn't even get the opportunity.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian from Puget was very, very responsive. I just didn't get a chance to
Yeah,
get back
yeah.
to you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just remember.
What's that?
No, I really, Chris had never check-in this week.
Mhm.
And we need to talk about it more, but energy storage is a hot topic and I will be talking to Chris about some ideas. I sent you an email and you didn't respond to it because I'm sure you were busy, but I look forward to seeing how our organization as a minimum can figure out whether there's any opportunities for us around energy storage. There's a lot of people discussing it. And some opposition. You may have read the article in the Sales Current that was pretty informative on that subject. But anyway, long and short of it is, I wanted to just bring that up. This is something that's been on my radar for years and years. And, it may not be practical for the PUD to be involved, but I'm always curious about opportunities, so.
Okay,
We'll have the discussion.
sounds good. Okay, the last thing is public comment. Any public wishing to make a comment?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Really?
You're official.
David?
Otherwise.
We can hand him the mic.
Robin Dexter, I almost raised my hand during the budget discussion, when Todd asked about, depreciation. I have similar questions about reserves. I'd like to hear, from Annette. We've never actually talked about it, except I've made a few comments about what the various philosophies are on reserves. And that somewhat intersects with the discussion of the 5-year plan because we never look beyond 5 years. And I think it would not be inappropriate to consider a longer look. not to change the whole document, but just to maybe have a chapter or a peek at what benefit would accrue by looking further, perhaps much further than 5 years. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
I'm going to take a moment here and say thank you very much. You know, as somebody who's made a lot of public comments over the years, it always disappointed me when nobody that you were speaking to acknowledged your point or the value of it, or they just said thank you and moved on. You raise a really good point about taking a look at reserves, especially when we have such a large potential expense coming up and the history of those reserves over time. So I'm going to make sure that we look at that too. So thank you for that.
Any other questions online? I can't see.
There are no
who's
hands
online
at this
system.
time.
No hands?
No hands.
No hands.
Great. All right. Let's see what time it is. 9:56. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. There's another signature stuff. Since